AI adoption in Asian supply chains is advancing at an uneven pace. While 43% of Asia Pacific CEOs are investing in transformation, weak infrastructure and fragmented logistics are still slowing progress. Here to discuss this are Iyaswaran Subramanian from Deloitte, Rupa Chandra from UNSCAP, and Ong Tun Kim from IBM. Now, going straight to our topic, why are these bottlenecks persisting despite the investment? Rupa, would you like to go first?
One of the major issues is really a lot of variability in the infrastructure that exists both across countries in the region as well as within countries. And this is reflected in things like, lack of dedicated freight corridors, multimodal transport networks not existing, port congestion, etc., etc. Um, One has to understand that the countries have been actually ramping up their investments. There are very dedicated sort of efforts in this area, but the demand for logistics and infrastructure is far outpacing the supply and the investments that are going in. And there are reasons for this because you have very rapid urbanization, you have high population density, you have problems of real estate, you have topography and geography issues in many countries. So it's a variety of reasons which is actually causing this, and the financing availability, because the amount of financing that is required, if you look at the logistics sector, for instance, $4.4 trillion worth, and it's projected to grow to over 10.5 trillion. But the problem is that the financing capabilities are not sufficient. Public debt is there in this region. It's also to do with issues of skills and talent shortage. For instance, in the logistics sector, that is not keeping pace. So there needs to be a lot more investment in the talent development part. Similarly, the issues of traceability and visibility in the supply chain, because supply chains are very fragmented in this region still. So that kind of investment using latest technologies and innovations is required.
According to the IBM's Manufacturing 4.0 study, only 28% of manufacturers are using operational data effectively for continuous process improvements. So this means that they struggle to react quickly and there's delayed response to the supply chain disruptions. At the same time, fewer than 1 in 5 have real-time access to important manufacturing data across the enterprise. So with the lack of real-time visibility, manufacturers miss the opportunities to optimize their logistics, to predict the demand shifts, as well as reduce their downtime. And in a recent survey with more than 2,000 manufacturers around the globe, the results have shown that more than 90% of the data collected are unused. And these data range from the machine performance, the demand and supply trending patterns, as well as the supply chain logistics. These are valuable assets for improving efficiency, but most manufacturers lack the AI infrastructure to extract such actionable insights.
Nations have been spending a good percentage of their GDP on infra, but the pace of urbanization has been extremely high. So with extreme urbanization, what has also happened is that these agglomerations have created very inefficient traffic models. Given the pace of growth, they've really resulted in travel times which are substantially higher, and therefore they are hindering a very efficient and cost-effective logistics. Even in terms of infrastructure creation itself and the development of supply chains, it has not been inclusive. Most of them have focused on the large regions, the large cities, and therefore the rural regions in nearly all these countries have been exempted or they have been excluded from this journey. So what has also happened is that while supply chain investments have been made, it's not resulted in holistic deployment of those supply chain models in any country.
So these manufacturing hubs in Asia, are they at risk of falling behind competitors in other regions?
Asia Pacific stands in a very interesting place because a lot of the countries are, even if they have not been impacted by the high tariffs, are very dependent on their imports from China as part of the value chain. So they will be affected regardless. So there will be a competitive challenge even coming from this latest trade policy development for many countries in Asia Pacific because of the very strong linkages with China. Now, where would the competition come from? And if one looks across the different regions, it would be primarily Latin America. But, it is not just one factor that determines competitiveness, right? So if we look across the ecosystem, then in terms of labor pool, productivity, very proactive governments, a lot of investment in infrastructure, general openness to trade as well as investment, a lot of regional integration in some parts of Asia Pacific. I mean, if we look at all these factors, it's difficult to really say that other regions could outcompete Asia Pacific, notwithstanding the challenges I mentioned earlier. More can be done. Where Latin America could gain, if one looks again at the recent trade policies, they have not got the kind of high tariff hikes. They're more at the base level of 10%. Of course, everything's evolving, so we don't know where things will stand for different countries, even in Asia Pacific. But yes, relatively less impacted from the tariff level. They're nearer to the main markets of North America. And so from a logistics point of view, time zone point of view, and so on, and also the fact that some of them are also investing quite a bit in new areas such as technologies and automotives, etc. So there is a potential competition there. The fact that they're not as linked with China also may mean that they might look much more attractive as destinations for investment in the near future, because there will be realignment of supply chains and investments along the way.
So many manufacturers in Asia struggle with limited digital transformation, limited skilled labor, as well as resistance to change, be it cultural or systematic reasons. And in one of the IBM's 2024 AI in Action report, it is shown that only 37% of industrial companies have successfully deployed AI at scale, and just 16% are considered as AI leaders. So while there are massive opportunities that AI presents, there are gaps, and this is mostly in Asia for the manufacturers because they are in the early stages of adoption. Now, many manufacturers lack the talent pipeline as well as the skilled labor to maximize the AI potential. So there is this need, an urgent need for upskilling and also to reskill to ensure that the workers can collaborate with the AI-driven automation. So companies can leverage on reskilling and upskilling programs that the company or the government provides to equip them with the skills. And they also need to have a mindset change in terms of the new way of working.
The economies of scale and scope that Asia has built over the last many years would also come under question, because we are now talking about hyper-personalization of products and servicification of manufacturing at all levels. If Asia does not innovate, and if Asia does not recreate its business models and the supply chain operating models, the danger of shift of supply chains from Asia Pacific, given the arbitrage benefits that we had earlier, would actually happen.
So given these, what must manufacturers do in order to stay competitive amidst these challenges?
So for many countries, if they are looking at becoming much more competitive, they might have to, given today's geopolitical environment and what we are likely to see in the coming months, they might have to start developing more of supply chains within their economies, or at least decoupling to some extent in terms of their import dependence from certain partner countries. That's one part. But I think if I were to put it 5 areas. One is investing much more in technology and innovation. That is very important. And that's true in terms of the supply chain and logistics part as well. I mean, putting in more automation in warehousing and inventory management, optimizing of deliveries, RFID, tracking, traceability, all of this requires investment in technology and innovation. So that's one part. Another is looking at your demographics and really trying to reap the demographic dividend, which is there in many of the countries. In some parts of Asia Pacific, of course, population is aging, labor costs are rising. So that would be a challenge, but that means you have to raise productivity. So investment, regardless in human capital, will be very important. A third part is actually about mobilization of capital, both public and private finances, because it will not be possible for some of the large investments that are needed to make manufacturing competitive. Governments will not be able to do it alone. So the private sector financing part is extremely important. So public-private partnerships will play a very important role. Similarly, if one looks at the sort of geopolitical dynamics right now, regionalization. I think a lot more effort in terms of regionally coordinated action and regional integration will be important. And finally, I think we can't forget about sustainability. So a lot more focus on reducing the carbon footprint, becoming much more resource and energy efficient, including in their supply chains, because of the sort of sustainability related imperatives now that are being put with trade measures.
We will advise the businesses to focus on areas where they can see quick gains in productivity and shorter time to value. Also focus on use cases that are scalable and relevant to every industry. For example, talent acquisition, customer service, apps modernization, as well as the IT ops. Secondly is to accelerate the AI adoption for operational efficiencies. Now, manufacturing enterprise should accelerate their AI adoption so as to be ready and react quickly to these disruptive competitive changes in the market, using AI for their predictive maintenance, for their demand forecasting, and also operational efficiency to reduce costs, to increase their speed, as well as improve adaptability. The very last step to take is to really invest in workforce development and upscaling. Now, manufacturers must invest in upskilling employees to address these labor shortages and to prepare them to be equipped with the skills and the knowledge to use these advanced manufacturing systems.
I think Asia should move away from being a converter of the world to being an owner of the value chain. We have close to 50% of the worldwide population, and therefore I think a market which is in totality extremely attractive to the rest of the world. Therefore, I think instead of just being a converter, I think we should own the value chain end to end, including innovations in material science, products, as well as solutions. That will be the competitive advantage and the comparative advantage for the future. Second one would be the focus on servicification of manufacturing. So when I said we move beyond conversion, it's not just about owning the value chain end to end of the product, but fundamentally as products are moving to a combination of services and solutions, where the servicification of manufacturing is becoming a big element, I think it's a good time for our manufacturers to start focusing on the post-manufacturing servicification area. And that is where I think a lot of the solutions, including Gen AI and agentic, will become very relevant. A lot of the servicification models will require agentic models to be deployed, and that can be a big area for us to expand, and in a very cost-effective manner.
Thank you so much for your time today, Eswaran, Rupa, and Tun Kim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Once again, those were Eswaran Subramanian, Supply Chain and Network Operations Leader at Deloitte Asia Pacific, Rupa Chanda, Director of Trade, Investment and Innovation Division at UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, and Ongtun Kim, General Manager for Manufacturing Solutions at IBM. For more news, visit manufacturing.asia.